So if you're waiting for the MacBook Air to be updated with the M3 chipset, I come bearing great news because it seems like it could be launching in just a few months, and so let's delve into it. Mark Gurman, the ever-credible Apple leaker, recently delved into what we could expect at a possible March event, and while alongside the new iPad Air and the iPad Pro, we could see updates to the 13-inch and 15-inch MacBook Air. Now, the main and only upgrade is going to be the M3 chipset, considering Apple had recently given the MacBook Air redesign in 2022 and then released a larger version in 2023, we are not getting any sort of design change anytime soon, so this will be a simple chip upgrade. For those wondering how much better the M3 is going to be compared to the M2, well, we don't have to wonder because the chipset's already been announced with the MacBook Pros, and it's a decent upgrade. I'm not gonna lie, I think I kinda got too excited about it being based on 3nm, and so I was expecting a massive leap forwards, but this is just your usual year-over-year update. Specifically, it's 21% faster CPU-wise, and 15% faster GPU-wise. Really, the headlining change will be harder ray tracing, and while I don't game, I am excited the most popular Mac is getting this because it could really help improve the gaming landscape for macOS, and no more will Windows be the default option for gamers. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this, it would be appreciated. But people, that's really it. I don't see Apple changing anything else. We might be lucky and we could get some new colors, similar to how the MacBook Pros got space black, and I would definitely love to see some fun and bright colors, like initial M2 MacBook Air rumors were pointing towards, but I'm gonna temper my expectations because the recently launched M3 iMac came in the exact same range of colors, so Apple could easily do the same thing with this refresh. I am, however, happy to see the 13-inch and the 15-inch are gonna be updated at the same time because it was certainly odd the larger size launched a year later with the exact same chipset, and I do low-key feel bad for those who bought the 15-inch at retail price because less than a year later, M3 is coming to the 15-inch. Now, Gurman does say Apple's developing these new Macs alongside macOS 14.3, which should be launching sometime during the end of Jan or February, but that apparently does not mean we're going to be seeing these models launch before March. And I'm gonna take Gurman's word for it, but of course, do remember that Apple did launch new Macs in Jan of 2023, which surprised everyone, and so I could see them launching this Mac before March as well. Also remember that these don't really need stage time because nothing here is actually new if you think about it. Both the design and M3 has already been released, and so this could easily be a press release. Then again, Apple clearly loves the press attention they get from their events, and they have introduced some very boring refreshes on stage in the past, so I'm ultimately still leaning towards a March release for these new Macs. Now, all this isn't particularly surprising information, and even I saw this coming, but what caught me off guard is when Gurman said the M2 Air might replace the M1 model in the range once the M3 models are released. I certainly wasn't expecting that because I was under the assumption the 13-inch MacBook Air, when updated with the M3 chipset, would also drop to $999. I know it's very rare Apple gives us a price cut on a new product, but they have done this before, guys. When the 2018 MacBook Air launched with a new design, the price went up to $1199, which was very expensive for a MacBook Air, but within a few years, it got several price cuts and eventually came back to $999. They also did this with the new design because that also released at $1,200 back in 2022, but when the 15-inch released, that got a $100 price cut, and so the M3 being $999 in 2024 did make sense to me, but Gurman seems to be pretty confident that Apple's keeping the M2 for that price instead. So based on this information, the 2024 MacBook Air range should look something like this. For $999 you get the M2 chipset, $100 more gets you the M3 chipset, and for $1299 you can have M3 with a larger display. I still find it weird Apple's gonna do this because $100 more for a new chipset seems like a no-brainer for most. They're much better off giving us M3 for that price instead. But anyways, at least this means the archaic M1 MacBook Air is finally dead. Don't get me wrong, it's still a fantastic machine. In fact, I'm still using one. But let's be honest, Apple should not be selling that for $999 3 years after release. I would be fine if it stayed in the range for $799 or less, but if they want to continue selling this for $999, it's better they just get rid of it. Now, Apple's refreshing the MacBook Air March in a bid to increase Mac sales, You see, in the fourth quarter of 2023, Apple saw a steep decline in Mac sales. Macs brought in $7.6 billion in revenue, which sounds like a lot, but for Apple that's actually not so good because it's down 34% from $11.5 billion that Apple earned in the same quarter last year. Now, the upcoming quarter should be slightly better for Apple considering they just gave us some new shiny models that would have got some Apple shoot to upgrades. But 2023 on the whole hasn't been great for the Mac sales-wise, and so the betting on the Air to pick up the slack and massively improve sales with this M3 refresh. But guys, I have my doubts. And that's not because the M3 MacBook Air is going to be a bad product. It's definitely solid, but it's more to do with the fact consumers don't have much of a reason to upgrade because existing Macs are already great. M1 was kind of released at the perfect time because we were stuck at home working off our Intel Macs, and so in came M1 that literally fixed everything. It made the base Macs great again, and so there was this huge rush in demand for these models, but that's all kind of died off now. For one, working from home is not really a thing anymore because society has mostly gone back to normal post-COVID, but also, let's be honest guys, we likely are never going to see a jump like Intel to M1 was. I was actually under the assumption M3 could be a big upgrade because it was based on 3nm, but that wasn't the case. Don't get me wrong, it's still very impressive Apple's been able to give us these consistent spec updates, but for those using M1 and M2, there's no reason for you to upgrade. I've had my MacBook Air for 3 years, and I've not experienced any major slowdowns, and so I don't see myself upgrading anytime soon. It would be nice to have the newer design for sure, but I just don't need it because the M1 Air still chugs along perfectly fine, and so I'm sure that's going to be the case for many of you guys still using M1 and M2 models. This also means that most don't need to buy the latest and greatest. If you're shopping for a new Mac, I'm more likely to point you towards an M1 or M2 model that's come down in price instead of buying an M3 Mac at retail price. So basically, I don't see Mac sales ever reaching the peak they achieved during the M1 phase, no matter how good these products are going to be. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching. Right, so Mark Gurman spills the beans regarding the next iPad Pro refresh, detailing what to expect and what kind of upgrades we could get, and I continue to be unexcited, and if you're wondering why, let's delve in. So in his new report, Mark Gurman mentions the upcoming 11-inch and 13-inch iPad Pros have the